And if there's a community that's used to dealing with unpredictability, it is creators, it's artists, it's, you know, where we create something that doesn't exist yet, and we try to get others on the journey, and then knowing that there's a film culture and there's a hunger and a need and a connection to be made should sustain us in saying, let's also, you know, become more, you know, let's take the risks, let's try to let other voices and other people get heard and get into the mix, because there's a need for it out there. I'm just kind of thinking, because in financing you're up against all these gatekeepers, right? And a lot of films, I mean, crowdfunding is hard. I know there are, like with a film chain, you know, the whole blockchain thing, they did also, they're doing crowdfunding, but it takes a lot of work for the producer and so on. But I think there's something there, and there's some other startups in development where they want to combine financing and marketing, which is really, I'm going to meet with them later today, and I think that's really interesting thing to think, like to make part of the financing to already start to look who can we engage with audiences, because you're always up against the data, like, you know, the market wants this, or this is what the audience wants. But at the same time, cinema is all about, you know, this old mantra of give the, you know, the audience what they didn't know they wanted. But at the same time, it's like very risk averse, and so I think we just need to open up to, you know, that. There are niches can be super valuable, and you know, we still get in applications these, who's your film for? Well, everyone between 20 and 60, and that just doesn't exist anymore.
I guess, sorry, just to that point, that is where Letterboxd has access to so much data on audiences, and you know, there've been really interesting things about, like, what films are people rewatching, like Carol, for example, by Todd Haynes. You know, is one of the most consistently rewatched films on Letterboxd.
Fantastic.
And you know, that we're exploring ways to partner with you know, studios, producers, that sort of thing, to really tap into that data. There's such a wealth of information out there on what viewing habits are, what is being rewatched, what genres that people are returning to, what excites people the most. So yeah, I mean, it's a wealth of information.
I think as well, something like, to think of a Cannes case study, something like After Sun, which obviously did so well in Critics Week here, and then really both Rotten Tomatoes and Letterboxd, I think, was so kind of instrumental in that film's success, because it was an independent movie, a small movie, and I know that the kind of beautiful writing that came out of critics' reviews and from Letterboxd users was so kind of front and center in the marketing campaign.
Can I just say one thing for that? It topped our awards leaderboard for like 6 weeks getting up to the award season, because it like swept the British Independent Film Awards. And I was like, I understood what that movie was, but the number of people that were coming to our site just to look to make sure it was still on top, it was like, I don't know, it was like the weirdest thing in the world. Go ahead. That was it.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. There were reams and reams of 5-star reviews out of Cannes last year of After Sun. And I think... you know, I'm a Cannes newbie. It's my first time here, and I think I once thought that would have been only critics, because a lot of critics do use Letterboxd. But being here, you know, experiences like the interaction we had last night with lots of other people we're speaking to, actually a lot of people are here as film fans first and foremost, and are, you know, maybe they're trying to become critics, and Letterboxd is their practice, and reviews like After Sun are where they are developing that art form, and yeah, we can use that. I think, you know, similar this year, How to Have Sex is I'm starting to notice having a similar effect. Lots of really, really enthusiastic reviews on Letterboxd out of that, and a lot of them aren't critics. They're just users who are passionate.
And I think that can be so helpful, not just from a filmmaker perspective, but from a distributor perspective, from a marketing perspective. If you go on Letterboxd and you look at who is actually responding to the film, and, you know, click on the profile and you say, oh, okay, well, this person that gave it a really good review is also a fan of X, Y, and Z. It makes it a lot easier when you're kind of looking at rolling out the film on a kind of wider scale. Who are the people that we should be kind of targeting, and how can we best reach them? Certainly, from a kind of critic perspective, you just mentioned about maybe Letterboxd is where people are kind of getting their like start as writers and film fans. We found it massively helpful in kind of finding people that are watching films and love films and want to write about them and talk about them. So it's not even just from a kind of filmmaking side, it's from a journalistic side as well. We have certainly found it really helpful in that way.
Mm. There's been a little bit, I've had a few producers as a scriptwriter that I've been talking to, and they were like, oh, but we're not interested in originals at the moment. All is like IP, existing IP, remakes. So this risk averseness is quite, and it's all like because we're so used to, and I mean, dramaturgically as well, the models that, the 3-act model, and, it's white dudes out of Hollywood, it's like, why do we need to tell stories that way? But that's another panel. But but just to say, we keep looking back in order to make things that it will be 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. And look at what the world is now and how unpredictable the last 5 years have been. And if there's a community that's used to dealing with unpredictability, it is creators, it's artists, it's, where we create something that doesn't exist yet, and we try to get others on the journey, and then knowing that there's a film culture and there's a hunger and a need and a connection to be made should sustain us in saying, let's also, become more, let's take the risks, let's try to let other voices and other people get heard and get into the mix, because there's a need for it out there. And the Danish Film Institute have been very active in focusing on audiences, and they've been collaborating with a company called Publikum, which is the word for audience in Danish, and where they have a lot of anthropologists and data people, IT people, and of course that's quite expensive, so you can apply the Danish Film Institute to have, during your script writing, testing within what you believe is your target group, which is a very wonderful and dynamic process, but it's only for the chosen few. And so the fact that there are all these other free ways of actually tapping into, figuring out, I really burn to tell this story. Are there any other people out there like me? And it goes all the back, to fan culture, which has always been looked down a little bit upon, but that's the mainstream, and we're doing the art. But it's the same thing. And even, and that's the realization through the work we've done in Torino Film Lab, is that even as an art house film, and even if you get into a sidebar, like whatever they're called here in Cannes, you're still fighting to get the attention of the journalists. It's still really hard, to reach the art house audience, because they are so broad as well, and they're spoiled for choice. So no matter where you are, you need to really consider, what should the journey be for me and my story?
Yeah, like you said earlier, it's not always about the kind of the obvious route, or the kind of like, instant 5-star reviews and instant kind of raves in all the trades. It can be, a film success can look very different depending on what that film is.
But of course, as a filmmaker, you can say, I'm just happy with whatever audience I get. The most important for me is to get the festival accolades and get that success, and then I'm on to my next film. But okay, that's fair enough if that's what you want. But for a lot of people, they actually do have a sort of something they want to share with the wider world, and then it's really a shame if you spent 5 years and then nobody gets to see it. Like you said, that lonely tree in the wood that falls and nobody. It's sort of a sad image, though. But it's just sad if you spend so much time doing something, and then the people that would really enjoy seeing it can't find it. They're not discovering it. So how do you get into their stream or path of discovery? And the fact that we have, pages like, communities like, I would say, Rotten Tomatoes and Letterboxd, is just there to tap into.